Thomas Mitchell had served as a royal guard at Windsor Castle for 12 years. He took pride in his position, knowing every corridor, every hidden passage, and every secret door within the ancient walls. His duty was simple: protect the royal family and maintain the security of their private quarters. On a cold November morning, Thomas received an unusual assignment. The head of security, Commander Harrison, pulled him aside after the morning briefing. The commander's face looked troubled, his usual stern expression replaced with something that resembled concern. "Mitchell, I need you to conduct a thorough security sweep of the Queen Consort's private wing," Harrison said, lowering his voice. "There have been some irregularities in the surveillance footage from that area. Nothing alarming, but we need to investigate." Thomas nodded, understanding the gravity of such an assignment. Camilla's private quarters were strictly off-limits, except during scheduled security checks. The Queen Consort valued her privacy above all else, and any unauthorized entry could result in immediate dismissal. Armed with his security clearance and a detailed floor plan, Thomas began his inspection in the early afternoon when Camilla was attending a charity event in London. The private wing felt different when empty, the usual warmth replaced by an eerie silence that echoed his footsteps. He started with the obvious areas: the bedroom, sitting room, and private study. Everything appeared normal. The elegant furniture stood in perfect order, fresh flowers adorned the tables, and personal photographs smiled back at him from their ornate frames. Thomas documented everything with his tablet, following protocol to the letter. As he moved through the connecting hallway, something caught his attention. The surveillance footage had shown unusual activity near the east wall of Camilla's study, but when Thomas examined the area, nothing seemed out of place. The wall was covered with an expensive tapestry depicting scenes from English countryside life. Thomas ran his hands along the edges of the tapestry, feeling for anything unusual. His training had taught him that the best hiding places were often in plain sight. As his fingers traced the ornate golden frame, he felt something unexpected, a slight depression in the wall behind the fabric. His heart began to race. In all his years of service, Thomas had never encountered anything like this in the royal quarters. He carefully lifted the corner of the tapestry and discovered what appeared to be a small, almost invisible seam in the wallpaper. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that this was not just decorative molding. It was the outline of a hidden panel. Thomas hesitated. His orders were to conduct a security sweep, but discovering a hidden chamber in the Queen Consort's quarters was beyond anything he had prepared for. He thought about calling Commander Harrison immediately, but something compelled him to investigate further. Using a small tool from his security kit, Thomas carefully probed the edges of the panel. After several minutes of delicate work, he heard a soft click. The panel shifted slightly, revealing that it was indeed a concealed door. Behind it lay darkness that seemed to swallow his flashlight beam. The chamber beyond was smaller than he had expected, roughly the size of a walk-in closet. The air inside felt stale and unused, carrying a faint scent of old paper and something else he couldn't identify. Thomas stepped inside cautiously, his flashlight revealing walls lined with shelves and filing cabinets. This was not what he had expected to find. Instead of stored furniture or forgotten royal artifacts, the chamber appeared to be some kind of private office or study. Documents were neatly organized in folders, and a small desk sat in the corner with what looked like correspondence scattered across its surface. Thomas approached the desk carefully, his training warring with his curiosity. The papers appeared to be letters, some handwritten and others typed on official letterhead. As his flashlight illuminated the documents, he began to recognize names and letterheads that made his blood run cold. The correspondence was not random. It was organized, systematic, and appeared to span several years. Thomas saw letters from various government officials, members of parliament, and even foreign dignitaries. What disturbed him most was that many of these communications appeared to bypass normal royal channels entirely. In one folder, he discovered what looked like financial documents, bank statements, investment records, and transaction reports that didn't match anything he knew about official royal finances. The amounts were staggering, and the accounts listed were in names he didn't recognize. Thomas realized he had stumbled upon something far more significant than a simple security irregularity. This hidden chamber contained evidence of activities that appeared to operate completely outside official royal business. The implications were enormous, and he understood that his discovery could change everything. As he photographed several key documents with his phone, Thomas heard something that made his heart stop. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Camilla had returned early from her engagement. He quickly gathered the papers he had been examining, ensuring they were placed exactly as he had found them. The footsteps were getting closer. Thomas switched off his flashlight and carefully backed out of the hidden chamber, pulling the panel closed behind him. He heard the soft click as it locked back into place just as the main door to the study opened. "Is someone there?" Camilla's voice called out from the adjoining room. Thomas quickly stepped away from the wall and called out, "Your Majesty, it's Thomas Mitchell conducting the security sweep as ordered." "Oh, very good," came her reply, though Thomas detected something in her voice, perhaps suspicion, perhaps merely surprise. He emerged from the study to find Camilla standing in the doorway, still wearing her coat from the London event. Her eyes seemed to search his face, looking for something that made him uncomfortable. "Find everything in order?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Yes, Your Majesty. All security protocols have been followed, and I found no irregularities," Thomas replied, hoping his voice sounded steadier than he felt. Camilla nodded slowly, but her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary. "Good. Thank you for your diligence, Thomas. You may continue with your duties." As Thomas left the private wing, his mind raced with the implications of what he had discovered. The hidden chamber, the mysterious documents, the secret financial records. It all pointed to something that could shake the foundations of the monarchy itself. He knew he had to report his findings to Commander Harrison, but he also understood that doing so would set in motion events that could not be undone. The evidence he had seen suggested activities that went far beyond anything a royal consort should be involved in. Walking through the castle corridors that had been his workplace for over a decade, Thomas felt like he was seeing everything with new eyes. The institution he had sworn to protect might be harboring secrets that could destroy it from within. That evening, as Thomas completed his shift report, he made a decision that would change his life forever. Instead of filing a standard security report, he requested a private meeting with Commander Harrison for the following morning. Whatever was happening in that hidden chamber, whatever those documents revealed, it was too important to ignore. The weight of his discovery pressed down on him as he walked home through the darkening streets of Windsor. Thomas Mitchell had always been a loyal servant of the crown, but now he faced a choice that would test every principle he held dear. The truth he had uncovered could protect the monarchy from a hidden threat, or it could destroy the very institution he had spent his life defending. The next morning arrived with an unusual tension in the air at Windsor Castle. Thomas had barely slept, his mind continuously replaying the documents he had seen in the hidden chamber. The financial records, the foreign correspondence, and the systematic organization of it all suggested something far more complex than he had initially realized. Commander Harrison's office felt smaller than usual as Thomas sat across from the desk, watching his superior's face grow increasingly grave with each detail of his report. Harrison was a man who had seen everything during his 30-year career in royal security, but even he seemed shaken by what Thomas had discovered. "You're certain about what you saw?" Harrison asked for the third time, his fingers drumming nervously on the mahogany desk. "Absolutely certain, sir. The chamber was professionally organized, and the documents appeared to span several years. This wasn't some forgotten storage space. It was actively maintained. Harrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the castle grounds. Royal staff moved about their daily duties below, unaware that their world might be about to change forever. After a long silence, he turned back to Thomas. "This situation requires extreme discretion. I'm authorizing a covert investigation, but it must remain completely confidential. We cannot afford any leaks until we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with." Thomas felt both relief and apprehension. His decision to report the discovery had been the right one, but he understood that they were now entering dangerous territory. Investigating a member of the royal family, even discreetly, carried risks that could end careers and possibly worse. "What are your orders, sir?" Thomas asked. "We need to access that chamber again, but this time with proper documentation equipment. I'm assigning Detective Inspector Sarah Collins from the Met Police to work with us. She specializes in financial crimes and has the security clearance necessary for this type of investigation." Harrison activated his secure phone and made a brief call. Within an hour, Detective Inspector Collins arrived at the castle. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s, with an air of quiet competence that immediately impressed Thomas. Collins listened to Thomas's account without interruption, taking detailed notes and asking precise questions about the documents he had seen. Her expertise in financial investigations became apparent as she identified several red flags in his description of the materials. "The foreign bank accounts you mentioned, do you remember any of the institution names?" Collins asked. Thomas closed his eyes, trying to recall the exact details. There were several Swiss accounts, at least one in the Cayman Islands, and what looked like transactions with banks in Luxembourg. The amounts were significant, millions of pounds. Collins exchanged a meaningful look with Harrison. "That pattern suggests sophisticated money laundering operations or undeclared foreign investments. Either way, it represents a serious breach of royal financial protocols." The plan they developed was simple but risky. Thomas would return to the private wing during Camilla's next official engagement, this time accompanied by Collins, who would be disguised as a maintenance technician. They would have approximately 2 hours to thoroughly document the chamber's contents. 3 days later, the opportunity arose. Camilla was scheduled to attend a state dinner in London that would keep her away from Windsor until late evening. Thomas and Collins entered the private wing shortly after her departure, both carrying legitimate maintenance equipment to support their cover story. The hidden chamber opened more easily the second time, as Thomas had become familiar with the mechanism. Collins immediately began photographing everything while Thomas acted as lookout. What they discovered exceeded even Thomas's initial assessment of the situation. The documents were meticulously organized into categories that painted a disturbing picture. One section contained correspondence with foreign officials from countries that had strained relationships with the United Kingdom. The letters discussed mutual beneficial arrangements and private understandings that appeared to operate entirely outside official diplomatic channels. Collins found evidence of what appeared to be influence peddling on an international scale. Letters referenced meetings with foreign business leaders, discussions about UK policy positions, and promises of access to senior government officials. The implications were staggering. If authentic, these documents suggested that Camilla had been operating her own unofficial foreign policy. The financial records were equally troubling. Collins identified sophisticated networks of shell companies and offshore accounts that had been receiving regular payments from sources around the world. The money trail was complex, but it appeared designed to obscure the true sources and destinations of millions of pounds. "This is not amateur hour," Collins whispered as she photographed banking documents. "Whoever set this up understood international finance and money laundering techniques. The complexity suggests professional assistance." In a locked filing cabinet, they discovered what appeared to be blackmail material. Photographs of prominent political figures in compromising situations, documented evidence of corruption by various officials, and recorded conversations that could destroy careers and reputations. The collection was comprehensive and appeared to span decades. Thomas felt sick as the full scope became clear. This wasn't just financial impropriety. It was a systematic operation to accumulate power and influence through coercion and manipulation. The woman who would someday be queen had apparently been building her own shadow network of control. Collins found evidence that the operation extended beyond Camilla herself. Names of accomplices appeared throughout the documents, including several people Thomas recognized as frequent visitors to the castle. A prominent businessman, a former government minister, and even a senior member of the royal household staff appeared to be involved in various aspects of the scheme. The most disturbing discovery came in a folder labeled Insurance Policies. It contained detailed plans for various scenarios, including responses to potential exposure of the operation. Thomas read with growing horror as he realized that these plans included strategies for discrediting potential whistleblowers and eliminating threats to the network. "We need to leave now," Collins said urgently, having photographed everything she could. "This is bigger than either of us imagined, and staying here any longer is too dangerous." They carefully restored everything to its original position and sealed the chamber. As they prepared to leave the private wing, Thomas noticed something that made his blood run cold. Fresh flowers had been placed in the study since that morning. Someone had been in the room while they were investigating the chamber. Collins immediately understood the implication. "She knows we've been here. The flowers are a message." They left the castle separately, following predetermined routes to avoid suspicion. Thomas returned to his regular duties, trying to maintain normal behavior while his mind raced with the implications of their discovery. Every interaction with other staff members now carried the weight of suspicion. Who could be trusted and who might be part of the conspiracy? That evening, Thomas received an unexpected invitation to join Camilla for tea the following afternoon. The request came through official channels, making it impossible to decline without raising suspicion. The invitation was ostensibly to discuss security arrangements for an upcoming event, but Thomas understood its true purpose. Collins contacted him that night with updates on her initial analysis of the photographed documents. Her investigation had confirmed their worst fears. The financial networks were real, the foreign connections were active, and the scope of the operation was international. "We're dealing with a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government and extends to foreign intelligence services," Collins explained during their secure phone conversation. "This isn't just about royal protocol violations, it's about national security." The evidence suggested that Camilla had been selling access to British state secrets, manipulating policy decisions through blackmail, and accumulating personal wealth through corrupt practices. The monarchy itself had been compromised, possibly for years, by someone who was supposed to be one of its most trusted members. Thomas understood that his upcoming meeting with Camilla would be a test. She would try to determine how much he knew and whether he posed a threat to her operation. His response could determine not only his own fate, but the future of the evidence they had gathered. As Thomas prepared for what might be the most important conversation of his life, he realized that the loyal guard who had stumbled upon a hidden chamber just days earlier no longer existed. He had been replaced by someone who understood that sometimes protecting the crown meant exposing those who wore it. The next afternoon would bring answers to questions that could reshape the British monarchy forever. Thomas Mitchell, a simple royal guard who had always believed in duty and loyalty, was about to discover just how far he was willing to go to protect the institution he served, even from those who were supposed to lead it. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the ornate windows of Camilla's private sitting room as Thomas Mitchell arrived for what he knew would be the most crucial meeting of his career. Every detail of the room seemed heightened. The delicate china tea set, the carefully arranged flowers, and most importantly, the calculating expression in Camilla's eyes as she gestured for him to sit. "Thomas, thank you for joining me," Camilla said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wanted to discuss the security arrangements for next week's state visit, but first I'm curious about your recent activities." The directness of her approach caught Thomas off guard, but his training kicked in. Years of royal service had taught him to maintain composure under pressure. He accepted the offered tea with steady hands, using the moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been conducting my assigned duties, Your Majesty. The security sweeps have been routine, and I've found nothing of concern." Camilla's laugh was soft but carried an undercurrent of menace. "Nothing of concern? How interesting. You see, Thomas, I have reason to believe that you've discovered something that has very much concerned you." The pretense was over. Thomas realized that Camilla had likely known about his discovery from the moment it happened. The hidden chamber, the documents, the financial records. She had been aware of his investigation from the beginning. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Your Majesty," Thomas replied, maintaining the facade while his mind raced through possible responses. Camilla stood and walked to the window, her silhouette framed against the afternoon light. "Let me share something with you, Thomas. What you discovered in my private study represents decades of careful work to protect this institution. You see, the monarchy doesn't survive on tradition and ceremony alone. It requires real power, real influence, and real resources." She turned back to face him, and Thomas saw a different person entirely. Gone was the carefully crafted public persona of the dutiful queen consort. In its place stood someone who radiated calculated authority and barely contained threat. "The documents you photographed, yes, I know about Detective Collins and your little investigation, represent my efforts to ensure the monarchy's survival in a changing world. The foreign connections provide intelligence that our official channels could never access. The financial networks ensure independence from parliamentary oversight. The leverage materials guarantee that key political figures remain cooperative." Thomas felt a chill as he realized the full scope of what she was admitting. "You've been operating outside legal authority. You've compromised the monarchy's integrity. I've strengthened it." Camilla's voice rose for the first time, revealing the passion behind her calculated exterior. "Do you think this institution survived for centuries by playing by rules written by politicians and bureaucrats? Real power requires real action, not endless committees and constitutional limitations." She walked to her desk and retrieved a folder that Thomas recognized from the hidden chamber. These financial records represent resources that could fund royal activities for decades without relying on taxpayer support. The foreign connections have prevented 2 potential military conflicts and secured trade agreements worth billions to the British economy. The intelligence gathered has stopped terrorist attacks that would have killed hundreds. Thomas listened in growing horror as Camilla detailed how her shadow operation had influenced major political decisions, manipulated media coverage, and eliminated threats to royal authority. The scope of her network extended throughout the British establishment and into foreign governments. "You're talking about treason," Thomas said quietly. "You violated your oath to the crown and the country." "I am the crown," Camilla snapped. "Everything I've done has been to protect and strengthen this institution. The legal niceties that constrain others don't apply to someone with my responsibilities." The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Detective Inspector Collins entered, accompanied by Commander Harrison and several other officials Thomas didn't recognize. Camilla's expression shifted from anger to resignation as she realized the true purpose of the afternoon's meeting. "Your Majesty," Harrison said formally, "I'm placing you under investigation for violations of the Official Secrets Act, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud against the Crown." Collins stepped forward with a warrant. "We have authorization to search these premises and seize all materials related to your unauthorized activities. The hidden chamber has been secured, and our forensic accountants are already analyzing the financial records." Thomas watched as Camilla's carefully constructed world began to collapse. The woman who had wielded shadow power for decades found herself facing the consequences of her actions. Her network of accomplices, identified through the documents, were being arrested simultaneously across London. "This is a mistake," Camilla said, her voice regaining some of its composure. "You're destroying something that has protected British interests for years. Without my networks, this country will be vulnerable to threats you can't even imagine." "The threats we need protection from," Harrison replied, "apparently include you." Over the following days, the full scope of Camilla's operation became clear through the investigation. The Shadow Network had indeed influenced major political decisions, but primarily to benefit Camilla's personal interests and those of her foreign allies. The claimed successes in preventing conflicts and terrorist attacks proved to be exaggerations or outright fabrications. The financial analysis revealed that while millions had flowed through the offshore accounts, most had ended up benefiting private entities controlled by Camilla and her associates. The promised independence from taxpayer funding was actually a sophisticated system for siphoning public resources into private hands. Thomas found himself at the center of the investigation, his testimony crucial to understanding how the operation had functioned within the castle walls. His detailed knowledge of royal security procedures helped investigators understand how Camilla had maintained her hidden activities for so long without detection. The media attention was intense, but carefully managed. The official announcement described financial irregularities and unauthorized diplomatic contacts without revealing the full extent of the conspiracy. The monarchy's survival required protecting its reputation even while excising the corruption within it. King Charles faced the most difficult decision of his reign. Camilla's actions had compromised the crown's integrity, but her public disgrace could damage the monarchy's stability. The solution came through a carefully negotiated arrangement that saw Camilla quietly stripped of her titles and exiled to private life, officially for health reasons. The hidden chamber was sealed and its contents destroyed after being fully documented for legal proceedings. The castle underwent a complete security review to ensure that no other unauthorized activities were taking place within royal premises. Thomas received a promotion and commendation for his role in exposing the conspiracy, but he found little satisfaction in the recognition. The investigation had revealed how easily trusted institutions could be corrupted from within, and how power without accountability inevitably led to abuse. Detective Inspector Collins continued her investigation into the international aspects of the network, working with foreign law enforcement to dismantle the remaining elements of Camilla's operation. Several foreign officials faced charges in their own countries, and diplomatic relations required careful management to address the damage caused by unauthorized activities. The broader royal household underwent significant reforms to prevent similar abuses in the future. New oversight mechanisms, financial transparency requirements, and security protocols were implemented to ensure that no single individual could operate outside official channels without detection. King Charles addressed the nation about the need for accountability and transparency in royal institutions, though the full details of Camilla's activities remained classified. The speech marked a new era of openness and reform that strengthened public trust in the monarchy's commitment to proper governance. Thomas returned to his duties with a deeper understanding of the institution he served. The discovery that had begun as a routine security sweep had evolved into a test of the monarchy's ability to police itself and maintain its integrity. The hidden chamber had revealed not just corruption, but the capacity for renewal and reform that would ensure the crown's survival. The corridors of Windsor Castle felt different now, still steeped in history and tradition, but also monitored by new systems designed to prevent the accumulation of shadow power. Thomas walked his rounds with the knowledge that sometimes the greatest threat to an institution comes not from outside enemies, but from those who claim to protect it while serving only themselves. The monarchy had survived its greatest internal crisis in generations, emerging stronger but wiser about the dangers of unchecked authority. The hidden chamber that had threatened to destroy the crown from within had ultimately become the catalyst for its renewal and reform. In the months that followed, as the investigation concluded and normal operations resumed, Thomas often passed by the study where his discovery had changed everything. The tapestry remained in place, but the wall behind it now held only empty space, a reminder that transparency and accountability were the true foundations of institutional strength.